How could you, being happiness itself, ever be unhappy? How could you, the reality itself, absolute existence, which ever is, ever cease to be? How could you, of the nature of the self, which is being consciousness bliss, ever be another, something different from your nature? Such is only because of ignorance, which takes the form of misidentification. From the confusion regarding identity comes confusion regarding reality and happiness. If you are not the body, then there will be no unhappiness regarding being the performer of action, the condition or state of the body, its qualities, its attributes, its sensations. If you know that you are not the mind, then you remain undefined by any thought ever conceived. If there is the realization that you are not the ego, then the very root of unhappiness, of the confusion regarding what is real and what is not, the very root of mistaken impressions regarding your identity is absent. Happiness, reality or existence, and identity, that is your true self, are one and the same thing. to find happiness that is unconditional, uncaused, and perpetual. Know yourself. To know reality, know yourself. For your view of yourself will invariably become involved in your view of what exists. To know yourself, deeply inquire, as Sri Bhagavan advises, who am I? And with an introspection that is non-objective in nature, being will know itself as it is. How could being ever cease? It is unborn and imperishable. It is not to be misidentified with the ego, with the mind, with the body, or with anything of this world. How could consciousness, which is of the very nature of supreme knowledge, entertain any ignorance or illusion? By realizing your nature, you find the knowledge, the wisdom that is innate. And it is eternal. How could bliss, ananda, ever suffer? The bliss of your true self is immortal. To find that supreme happiness or peace that is neither given nor taken away, neither created nor destroyed. Know yourself. Question yourself and abandon the tendency to misidentify yourself with anything that actually you are not, such as all that is transitory, all that is objective, all that is differentiated. turn within and find yourself to be that which is infinite, eternal, stateless, partless, beginningless, endless. If your experience appears to be in any way otherwise, inquire more deeply. Who am I? Where the notion of an embodied individuality subsides, the truth shines.
Thank you, Master. Your discourse pointed to what is so inexpressible, and yet it brought me back to one of my favorite contemplations, which was about the story of the Maharshi in his uncle's house when he awakened. And I would wonder, since he didn't have, philosophical or even very many spiritual terms to put to it, what did he experience? And I wondered if his deathlessness that he realized was a sense of completeness. And from that completeness, these are just words pointing, of course, but comes the freedom, the bliss.
It is the same thing whether we refer to this as that which is deathless, that which is perfectly full, Purnam, or complete, freedom, peace. What is it that is entirely free? What is it that is perfectly complete? What is it that is actually deathless? What is it that is changeless? For you must be changeless to be at peace. The answer to all those questions is the same.
And it seems so simple that it begins for him, from the description, with transcendence of the body. And then all the rest was right there.
If you realize that you are not the body, just that much, in what way would you be bound? In what way would your peace be disturbed? The I am the body misconception is the cornerstone of delusion. If you know fully and completely that you are not the body, what more could you need to know? That which applies to liberation from the body applies to any other form that could be attributed to the experiencer. If you are not the body, gross or subtle, what would be missing?
on Friday night, you're talking about how to meditate on the self, and then you mentioned it has to be devoid of differences, and then you enumerated 3 different differences between unlike entities, like entities, and one between one part of the other. So the first 2 was fairly obvious, even experientially doesn't make sense. The third one is what I had a little difficulty in experiencing. At some level it is clear that there's only one existence. But to completely abandon the idea that there is an individual was not clear at that time. So I was trying more yesterday why it is not clear. And today when you started the Satsang, it became more and more clear in the sense that I was trying to use the same misidentification to transcend itself, and that is like going in cycles. So abandonment really means complete disidentification. I'm telling this now, but I'm still not completely one with that experience. It seems to be, I want to get to a point where it is like, is completely sure that that is the reality.
How certain are you of your existence?
It's as certain as existence. But the problem is I'm trying to add something onto it.
Is existence an experience that comes and goes? Or does it always abide? Who is the one for whom coming and going appear? In the thought, I want to realize the self. Who is the I? Can he truly be something other than that existence which is Brahman? If there appears to be a semblance of internal difference within the one absolute existence, who perceives that difference? The difference and the perceiver are the same thing. but what actually is there? It is just like the recognition that the ego and ignorance are the same thing. So if we inquire, whose ignorance? For whom is the ignorance? The I and the ignorance, being the same thing and unreal, vanish. Likewise is it with differentiation. Thus, meditation on the self becomes non-objective. There is not one who meditates on a distinct thing called the self. Rather, the self is the very existence of the meditator. And existence cannot cease to exist at any time. Similarly, it cannot be more or less at any time. It cannot even be a unity, let alone a diversity.
So the changes perceived, so-called changes perceived in existence are as illusory as the perception itself.
The changes or modifications perceived are as illusory as the perceiving. The perceiving is as illusory as the perceiver. One self alone exists eternally. It is homogeneous existence. There is no different one to experience any other kind of difference ever. If it seems in your experience to be slightly otherwise, simply inquire as for whom that is. Who am I? All differentiation is illusory, like the snake superimposed on the rope. Whatever kind of difference there may appear to be, different kind, same kind, internal difference, whether it's a difference in your happiness, a difference in your identity, you seem to become an individual or an embodied being, a difference in what you regard as real, as when the changes of states of mind, waking, dreaming, and sleep occur. Whatever kind of difference there may appear to be, continue to deeply, profoundly inquire Who am I? And then you'll peacefully abide in the differenceless state, which is the only real state there is.
Couple of questions. Last night I was reading the latest issue of Reflections, and I had an experience that I've had many, many times, but it had a different result. And I just wanted to ask you about that and see if my understanding is correct. What I was reading was a transcript from a satsang, and in it you posted a question, as you often do, and it's a kind of question that really invites one to turn your mind inward and to reflect and meditate deeply on that question. Often what happens is when I'm reading, when I come to the question, I stop reading, I close my eyes, and I meditate on it. And it has a natural conclusion. It's just the experience of there's nothing left, there's no further to go. And so then I usually open my eyes and continue reading. And often what I read after that is a very good description of the experience of meditating on that question. And I've always kind of marveled at how could I have that exact same experience? The words often are very similar, sometimes identical, but the essence is the same. But last night, when I got through with the meditation and I started reading what you said next, the experience was, well, of course the experience is going to be the same, but because there wasn't somebody, Jim, reading a guy's named Nomi's words. What it felt like was there was a self revealing itself to the self, and there wouldn't be two different answers, and it wouldn't be a coincidence that the same experience would be there.
So what is the question?
Is that the correct understanding? It's kind of obvious, I guess, when I relate it.
Where there is that which is realized by all, without a trace of difference, how could there be a doubt of whether it's correct or not? The result of profound inquiry, what we call realization, is quite naturally of a self-evident, doubtless certainty, for it is not dependent on thinking. Until this certainty is certain, one should continue to inquire. There truly are no such entities as you and I and another. All such thinking is based on the I am the body misconception, that misidentification. If we are not bodies, where are you, I, and others?
They're just, I was going to say gone, or not. They're just, I really meditate on that question, if I'm the body, and you point out the you and the I and the others, they disappear like my experience of myself in a dream. The body no longer is a point of differentiation.
For that which is bodiless, there's no such thing as inside and outside. And with the subsidence of the first person, as the Maharshi points out in Saddarshanam, the second and third persons also subside. You, it, depend on I. In the eyeless existence that you truly are, there are no differences such as others.
The second, I don't know if it's a question or not, but it's very, I think, very closely related. On Friday night in a dialogue, you said that, and I think you were referring to what I was talking about, that all the differences are gone. And you dismissed the entire objective sphere by saying it's unnecessary. And that really stuck with me. I kept asking myself, what is unnecessary? And that was pretty clear, but what actually is necessary? And they're in self-knowledge, in the mandalas, there's, in the section on aspiration, there's a place where you talk about what's necessary. And it's in a verse on self-realization. And I just went back to that and just kept reading that over and over. And it became very clear that that's what's necessary. And when I pursue that, it makes the unnecessary become unnecessary. It just, the unnecessary desires, the unnecessary happiness, differences, bondage, suffering, all of that. In that pursuit, in that in that desire for liberation, it takes care of itself. And I'm forever grateful to the Maharshi for pointing to what's necessary.
He points to what is necessary. He himself is what is necessary. Grace is also said to be necessary, but it is already completely full. In realization of the self obviously is necessary. It is already ever-existent. What then is necessary? The knowledge which constitutes self-realization. And for that knowledge to dawn, there need be only a consistent, deep, ardent desire for realization. If the desire for self-realization is strong enough, one becomes non-attached toward all else, and his happiness is no longer entangled in delusion. So limitation drops off. If the desire for self-realization is strong enough, one is ardent in the quest to know the self, the necessary discrimination will be born within one. And the confusion regarding the real and the unreal, the self and the not self, will vanish. If only the desire for self-realization is there and strong, all the qualities that would be useful for spiritual practice quite naturally shine in one. Even if they appear now to be weak, they rise up, strong. But there must be this intense desire for self-realization. We could even say that self-realization is naturally humble. Unless it's fully invited in, it doesn't enter.
That makes a lot of sense, what you just clarified, because I noticed when, on occasion, I've come to the temple to visit for meditation in the afternoons when it's open, and when my mood was one of absolute surrender and devotion to Maharshi's grace, with every fiber of my being at his feet, I felt a kind of magnetism from his picture just pulling all of my molecules toward his being. And in that liberating moment was freed from all fear and pain for those 2 hours while I was here. But it was an experience of His grace, and it feels as if one of the keys is that invitation that He spoke of asking for realization wholeheartedly. It seems like that might be one of the important components.
So one's approach matters significantly, doesn't it?
Apparently.
Whether it's coming to a temple, meditation, satsang, reading a scriptural text, and other such things. How you approach it matters supremely. If we approach understanding the value of it, the magnitude of it, with humility and an intense desire to realize, all these things come alive for us. Without the right approach, one doesn't see.
The approach that you were talking about, I can say I don't really always know if I'm approaching what I'm doing correctly. And it seems it's because when I misplace my happiness, the first thing that I do is just start it's kind of like whining to myself.
Does that help?
No.
Then don't do that. It's easy to tell if your approach is correct or not. If it's correct, if it's deep, your experience will be profound. If your experience is not profound, change your approach.
I guess what I was trying to say is that I look at something so small in that instance, I could be seeing the whole bigger picture at that instance. I can, rather than, oh my God, I'm unhappy, bad, what am I gonna do? It's like, sometimes I can see the bigger picture, like, oh wow, like I can inquire, I can find that happiness, I can find that true surrender and devotion. And I wish to have that kind of realization all the time when I'm not chasing that little momentary getting away from that state of mind that I'm in.
Deep devotion is like a shoreless, fathomless ocean. You shouldn't trade it for a drop, even though the drop also comes from that ocean.
Yeah.
If you keep this in mind, there'll be clarity regarding your decisions.
Yeah. Lately I've been noticing like how when I enter into a state of mind that I don't find valuable, or is like, it doesn't feel like happiness or devotion, I do something that will help me to get there right away, and it changes the entire experience. And it makes me wonder, why don't I do this all the time?
Don't ask me. Perhaps you'll arrive at a loss for an answer as well. and be done with that approach.
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of expressing excitement about that subject matter.
It's all right. Plunge into that shoreless, fathomless ocean. In this lies supreme happiness. And the vast truth.
इत्यात्मदेहभागेन प्रपञ्चस्यैव सत्यता यथोक्ता तर्कशास्त्रेण ततः किं पुरुषार्थतः.
Says the opponent, By the above distinction between the self and the body, it only follows that the manifested world is real, as declared by the science of logic. Your aim, therefore, fails.
Ityatmaddeha dehatmatvam nivaritam idanim deha bhedasya hyasatvam sputamuchyate.
This is the answer. By the above distinction between the self and the body, the identification of the body with the self has alone been refuted. The unreality of the body as a separate entity will now be clearly explained.
Chaitanyasyaika rupatvad bhedo yukto na karhichit jivatvam cha mrishajneyam rajjau sarpagraho yatham.
Since consciousness is one by nature, no distinction is admissible under any circumstances. Even the condition of the individual soul must be understood to be unreal, like the apprehension of a serpent in a rope.
Rajvajnanat kshanenaiva yadvadrajjurhi sarpini bhadi tadvachidis sakshad vishwakarena kevalam.
As the rope, in consequence of one's ignorance of it, appears in an instant as a serpent, so does consciousness, which is ever pure, manifest itself as the universe.
Upadanam prapanchasya brahmanonyanya vidyate tasmat sarva prapanchoyam brahmaivasti na chetarat.
There can be no other material cause of the universe than Brahman. All this universe, therefore, is only Brahman and not else.
Vyapya vyapakata midhya sarvamatmeti shasanat iti jñate pare tattve bhedasya vasarakutah.
The distinction of the pervader and the pervaded is unreal by reason of the declaration, the self is all. If the highest truth is thus understood, how can there be room for difference?
Shrutya nivaritam nunam nanatvam swamukhena hi kadham bhaso bhavedanyaha sthite chadvaya karane.
Indeed, multiplicity is directly contradicted by the Veda. How can there be any manifestation different from the one cause?
Doshopi vihita shrutya mrityo mrityum sagacchati iha pashyati nanatvam mayaya vanchito naraha.
The Veda has also pointed out the evil consequence, namely that the man who, duped by illusion, perceives multiplicity in this world, passes on from death to death.
Brahmana sarva bhutani jayante paramatmanaha tasmad etani brahmaiva bhavantityavadharayet.
All creatures are born of Brahman, the Supreme Self. One should therefore understand that all these are Brahman itself.
Brahmaiva sarva namani rupani vividhani cha karmanyapi samagrani bibharti dishrudirjagau.
The Veda has declared that Brahman alone assumes all names, all forms, and all activities.
Suvarna jayamanasya suvarnatvam cha shashvatam brahmano jayamanasya brahmatvam cha tadha bhavet.
Whatever is made of gold retains forever the nature of gold. So too, all that is born of Brahman is of the nature of Brahman.
Swalpamapyantaram krutva jivatma paramatmanoho yassantishthati mudhatma bhayam tasya vibhashitam.
The Veda has declared that the ignorant man who rests content with making the slightest distinction between the individual soul and the Supreme Self is exposed to danger.
இனியதனை கைமாறு செய்வேனல்லாம் இருமையிலானினது நிஜ சொரூபம் தானே அநியமிலா நீ நானாய் நானே நீயாய் அமர்கின்ற ஐக்கியமாம் அழியின் கண் அணியுமகம் பிரம்மாஸ்மி ஞானத்தாலே நான் மூழ்கி ஒன்றாக கலந்தே நன்றோ தனியுருவாய் தான் தானாய் தனித்த இந்த தகமையினில் தனக்கயலோர் அணுவும் உண்டோ ஆதலினால் நான் கைமாறளிப்பதற்கு அதனை அடைந்தெங்கேனும் போவதற்கும் ஏதுவிலை எப்போதும் எவ்விடத்தும் இருப்பதெல்லாம் ஏகசிதா காயந்தானே ஓதியவா ஓரணுவும் அயலில்லாதால் ஒன்றினை நீ உபதேசம் செய்வதற்கும் மீதினையான் இனிமையுடன் கேட்பதற்கும் இடமதிலை இவ்விசித்திரம் என்னே ஐயா சத்குருவாய் அருளியிடும் நீயும் இல்லை சச்சீடனாகியுள்ள நானும் இல்லை முக்குணமாய் தோன்றிய ஓர் பிரிவும் இல்லை மூலமதாம் அவித்த இல்லை மாய இல்லை துர்குணமாய் தோற்றிய ஓர் ஜகத்தும் இல்லை தொடர்புற்ற ஜீவேசராரும் இல்லை நிர்குணமாம் பரபிரம்ம சொரூபம் ஒன்றே நீக்கமர நிலை பெற்று நிகழ்ந்தோ ஏகமதாம் பரபிரம்ம ஸ்வரூபம் என்னும் இணையற்ற ஆனந்த சாகரத்தில் தாகமர மூழ்கி விளையாடி நன்றாய் தாபமெல்லாம் தவிர்த்தந்த மயமேயாகி பாகமர நிலை நின்ற என்றனக்கு பார்க்க ஒரு பொருளேனும் அயலே இல்லை. சோகமெல்லாம் தவிர்த்தென்னை யாழா நின்ற சுககுருவே நினதருளின் பெருமை என்னே. இன்றழியே உனை நோக்கி வணங்குவேனே, இருண்டுபடும் மதனாலம் வணங்க கூடா. தன்றியனை யா நோக்கி வணங்குவேனே, அடுக்கு பலன் யாமையினால் அதுவும் கூடாது. என்றும் ஒரு வடிவான உன்னை நோக்கி இருமயர யானின்று வணங்குவேனே. நின்றவனை அஞ்ஞானியனை நீ சொல்வாய், நிர்மலமாம் தன்னையரில் இருமையுண்டோ. நிர்மலமாம் சத்குருவே நான் இப்போது, நீ என்றும் நான் என்றும் வேதமென்னி. பரிவுடனே உன்னை நோக்கி வணங்குவேனே, பரிசேதப்படுவதனால் யானெனக்கே. பிரம்மவதாம் அபசாரம் செய்தோனாவேன், வேதமுறும் மதியன்றோ பயத்துக்கேது. பரகுருவே ஆதலினாலாயும் காலை, பண்ணியிடும் உபசாரம் ஒன்றும் காணே. எப்போதும் எல்லாமும் மேக சித்தாய் இருப்பதனால் அத்யந்த மௌனியாகி, கல்போல அசைவற்று கலங்கமற்று கற்பிதமாம் சங்கற்ப விகற்பமற்று சத்போத சூன்யனாய் தானே தானாய் தனித்துரமாய் நிற்பதுவே அரணன்றி. எப்போதும் இதனையும் முன்போன் மற்றும் எய்தியிடல் எனக்கு இதமாய் தோற்றவில்லை. சோகமெல்லாம் மரநீக்கி என்னை ஆண்ட சுககுருவே நீ அருளும் உபதேசத்தால், பாகமுற தோற்றியிடும் தோற்றமெல்லாம் பரபிரம்ம வடிவான நானேயாகும். ஏக பரிபூரணமாம் என்ன எல்லால் எப்போதும் எல்லளவும் எவையும் இல்லை. ஆகையினால் அந்நியமெல்லாம் உபசாரத்தை அன்புடன் நான் செய்திடுவோர் இடமும் இல்லை. குறைவு தரும் அஞ்ஞான தசையில் முன்பு குரு சீடர் முதலியதாம் வேதம் கண்டே. நிறைவு தரும் விஞ்ஞான தசையில் நின்று நினதருளால் எவ்வேதம் அயலும் காணே. சிறுமை தரும் வேதமலம் அனைத்தும் நீங்கி சின்மயமாம் பரபிரம்ம ஸ்வரூபமாகி, மறைவரவே தான் தானாய் தனித்த என்றன் மகத்தான மகிமைதனை என் சொல்வேன் யான். உத்பவமார் உலகங்கள் எவையும் இன்றி ஓதியிடும் குரு சீடராரும் இன்றி, கற்பிதமாம் மாயை முதல் உபாதியின்றி கருதியிடும் ஜீவேசராரும் இன்றி, நிர்பயமாய் நிலை பெற்று நிகரொன்றின்றி நிகில மகா வாக்குகளின் பொருளாய் நின்ற அற்பமில்லா பரபிரம்மமான என்ற அதிசயமாம் மகிமைதனை என் சொல்வேன் யான். குறைவின்றி நிறைவின்றி குற்றமின்றி குணங்குறிகள் முதலியவை எவையும் இன்றி, மறைவின்றி தெரிவின்றி மனதும் இன்றி மனோமயமாம் மயக்கங்கள் அனைத்தும் இன்றி, பிரிவின்றி தனதின்றி பிரிவொன்றின்றி வேதமுறும் எப்பொருளும் என்றும் இன்றி, அறிவொன்றா வடிவான பிரம்மமாக அமைவுற்ற என் மகிமை என் சொல்வேன் யான். சன்மாத்திரமான பர பிரம்மமாகி சலனமர நிலைக்கின்ற என்றனக்கு சின்மாத்திரமாகியுள்ள என்ன எல்லால் சிறிதும் ஒரு விகற்பமுமே பிரிதாயில்லை. என் மாத்திரமாகியுள்ள என்ன எல்லால் எவையேனும் இருந்திடுமே விலகும் மன்றோ. தன்மாத்திர மலதவையும் தோற்றாதத்தால் தான் தானாய் தனித்தென்றும் நிற்கின்றேன் யான். விரிவுறவே வெகுவிதமாய் விளம்பி என்ன வேறறவே நீ அருளும் உபதேசத்தால் சர்வமுமே பிரம்மென்றும் அது நான் என்றும் சலனமில்லா அகண்ட பரபோதம் பெற்று திரிசியமாம் வேதமயல் அனைத்தும் தீர்ந்து திகழ்வுருவாம் பரபிரம்ம வடிவேயானேன். அருளுருவாய் எழுந்தருளி என்னை ஆண்ட ஆசிரிய மினதருளிதென்னே என்னே. அகோபேத மயலணுவும் எங்கும் இல்லை, அகோமாயே மகதாதி எவையும் இல்லை. அகோ சித்தம் முதலியதோர் அணுவும் இல்லை, அகோ ஜீவர் முதலியவர் யாரும் இல்லை. அகோ மோகம் அணுவேணும் எங்கும் இல்லை, அகோ பாசம் அணுவேணும் எங்கும் இல்லை. அகோ என்றும் எப்பொருளும் எங்கும் இல்லை, அகோ எவையும் அகண்ட பர பிரம்மம் தானே. அகோ குருவின் மகிமையினை என் சொல்வேன் யான், அகோ நூலின் மகிமையினை என் சொல்வேன் யான். அகோ ஞான மகிமையினை என் சொல்வேன் யான், அகோ ஞானி மகிமையினை என் சொல்வேன் யான். அகோ சாது மகிமையினை என் சொல்வேன் யான், அகோ சாந்தி மகிமையினை என் சொல்வேன் யான். அகோ பிரம்ம சுகமகிமை என் சொல்வேன் யான், அகோ எனது சுகமகிமை என் சொல்வேன் யான். அகோ நித்த பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே, அகோ சுத்த பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே. அகோ புத்த பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே, அகோ முத்த பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே. அகோ அமல பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே, அகோ அச்சல பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே. அகோ குறைவில் பரபிரம்ம நானே யானே, அகோ குரவ நினதருளிதென்னே என்னே. கல்பிதமாய் தோற்றமெல்லாம் பிரம்மம் என்றே காண்பதெல்லாம் மற்றணுவும் மயலா காணே. செப்பிய இவ்வதிதிடமாம் நிச்சயத்தால் சின்மயமாம் பரபிரம்மமாகி நின்றேன். இப்படி என் மனதிலுள்ள நிர்ணயத்தை இசைப்புற்றேன், இதில் இறையும் மையமில்லை. நிர்பயமாய் என முழுதும் ஆளும் தன்மை நிகரற்ற சத்குருவே நினது பாரம். இன்னவிதம் நிதகமுனி இசைத்த பின்னர் இணையற்ற தன் ஸ்வரூப சுகத்தீர்ந்தான். மண்ணு சிவ பக்தியுடன் குருவின் பக்தி மறுவினவரே கர்மதால் மோட்சம் சார்வார். அந்நியர்கள் ஒரு காலம் அதனை சாரார், அணுகும் இதில் ஐயமில்லை எனவே ஸ்கந்தன். உண்ணவுணா கருணையுடன் செய்கீஷவ்யர்க கோதிய பாரகிலர்க்கும் உரைத்தான் சூரன். அரியதான அகண்ட பரம்பொருள் அனுபவத்தை அடைந்த நிதாகனின் குறிய தன்னனுபூதி உரைப்பதும் ஒன்றுமே பரமன்றே இலாமையான் குரவனுக்குபச்சாரங்கள் செய்திட கோடி மாறிலை என்று குறிப்பதும் குரவனுக்குபச்சாரங்கள் செய்திட கோடி மாறிலை என்றொரு குறிப்பதும் பரம ஆனந்த தாண்டவம் மாடுனம் பரசிவன் தன்ன கண்டஸ்வரூபமே பரம ஆனந்த தாண்டவம் மாடுனம் பரசிவன் தன்ன கண்டஸ்வரூபமே பரசிவன் தன்ன கண்டஸ்வரூபமே